Season 7, Episode 11, number 276 of the Decoded Podcast. Chris, how's it going?
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
I'm installed in the kitchen.
Mon frere. Mon
Mon
frere.
frere.
There's
Mon
a
frere.
joke there at Bosco. One of the guys I work with, he'll yell out at me, Mon frere. And since you're not on Twitter anymore, I posted a picture I have on my locker at Bosco. And then
Mm-hmm.
he wrote Mon frere on this speech bubble thing that he stuck to it. Anyway, it's funny how all the French is coming together, and I bet you Rochelle's here, and she's all about the French. So, um, I was gonna say good morning in French, and it escapes me. Bonjourne. That's good day, I guess. Anyway, welcome
I've
to
heard people say bon matin to
Bon
do a direct,
matin. Yeah, that's
yeah,
morning.
to do
Matin.
a direct translation, but I don't know if,
Bonjourne is good day, I believe. Anyway, we'll be
yeah,
corrected soon enough.
I know.
Because she can't help herself. It's the teacher in her. But anyway, um, shoot, where were we going?
We did a whole lot of on-ramp talking about my dog and then talking about the acting process,
Right. And
talking about representing. You know, there's a connection there though, right? So I'll do it briefly. So, sorry, Rochelle's with us. Rochelle's
I don't know
kicking
if
with us.
Rochelle's with us. We have a viewer. I'm assuming
Okay,
it's
so
Rochelle,
whoever's
but it
whoever's
could
with
be
us.
Gary.
Oh, could be Gary. So, yeah. So I'm in the play, and the character that I play in the play, I don't like this person. That's the heart of it. I don't like this person. Um, and this is so this is the work. The character as a person, I don't think I would ever be friends with. I wouldn't crave to be around them. I wouldn't tolerate their actions, and I have to represent this person on stage. So I like the challenge of this. This will get unpacked even more over the next 3 months. It has me thinking about this idea of I'll bring it back to education just briefly, is having to represent ideals, systems, protocols, and procedures that you might disagree with too, but you have to kind of toe the line with it. So this is just the acting version of that. But yeah, we've all had to do that. Something about assessment, something about literacy, something about progressive discipline. We're like, I effing hate that. I hate that. I do not like that. That's not how I roll. It's like, but it's on my TPA, so I have to sort of represent it somehow. I don't know if I feel the tension anymore about that in school. I think I get this sense like, I'll wait and be told that I'm going in the wrong direction. I'll just do what I know is right. With the play, I can't do that so much. Like, I really do have to take the director's instructions and say, no, you need to say that word that you don't like to say, Clough, or you do have to act like that on stage, even though I can see it's making you uncomfortable. But the director often says, if I see you uncomfortable, then you're not deep enough in the character. So if they can see me as Clough on stage uncomfortable with what I'm doing, that means I'm not inside the character enough. He said, yeah, right? So that's kind of like that's a good one, isn't it?
It speaks to so much about life.
Yeah.
Does it not?
Yeah. You haven't found a way in yet. You're outside banging. You're an adornment to your own mindset. Like, get inside of it. Get inside of it. So,
and that thing that keeps you from going inside is the
being identified. Like, now everybody knows that's where that guy lives, right? It's like, you go inside. It's one of those, you pull up to a driveway, cars on the lawn, maybe sorry, there's dog shit all over the driveway. Like, everything about the house just looks like it hasn't been cared for. And then you're sitting out there in your car, and you can drive away. You just leave. But if that's your house and people start to see you're now the owner, you go in the house. you decide whether or not you leave all that crap outside. But it's you. Like at some point, you're identified as the resident. Now, with this particular character, if we talk about the rules of school, there's a whole lot of stuff that I've heard teachers say, yeah, I get it, but I don't operate that way. And usually the person that's sort of throwing that vibe at them has in some small way accused education of doing something wrong, but they've done it through the teacher in front of them. Teachers always do that. Yeah, well, the education system, right? Then it kind of just gets harmonized right like that. Like it's hard to see that they don't often, whenever I've been accused of sort of making a mistake by someone who's not in education, I am the messenger for all of education. So they're telling it to me like somehow I can do something about it. But anyways, yeah, I've had the director right now has already said, director's name is Richard. He said, if he said there's going to be a place of truth inside the character, that the things on the page are the reactions to the truth in the character. He said, find the truth, and then you'll find a way to have those actions. And so it comes down to getting to know this character I play. His name is Alan Raleigh. And so if I spend the time feeling out the challenge, feeling out what's the possible backstory for this guy to become this way, in theory, I too could act that way. The danger is, and you've heard of method actors, that they become insufferable while they're in the rehearsal. Because, I definitely don't need to be an asshole to my family for the next 3 months just to figure out the truth behind this character. In the same way any of the other characters, like the last one I played a thug, like I didn't need to beat up my family to sort of be the thug. Prior to that, I didn't have to be a map store owner to figure out how to sort of be inside that play. But you get kind of close. You get kind of close to it. So
does I know you just met the director, correct? Like you didn't know him before. Does having a relationship with him, like as you continue to move forward and as you continue to trust him as a director, do you think that will help you?
Yeah. Oh, I already trust him.
Oh, okay.
I actually do. Yeah. How he rolls, I get it. I get it. I'm fine with it. I understand. I like how he gives feedback. I like how interactive he is during rehearsals, as in he's reacting to things that are happening on stage that we're doing. He sees things, he sees details and calls it out. Just the noticing, the nuances. And he's quick. He's like, okay, let's try this. Okay, let's try this. So he iterates quickly, which I liked. I appreciate that too, just in the broad sense.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about how this character progresses and how you find your way in, if you do. I suspect you will, but
yeah, if any of the listeners or even you, if you're curious at all about the movie version, there is a movie called Carnage. So the play's called God of Carnage, but the movie's called Carnage. It has Jodie Foster, John C. Reilly. Is it Christoph Wentz?
Something like that.
You would know him. He has sort of like, it sounds maybe like an Austrian, kind of like a smooth Austrian German accent. And Kate Winslet play the parents. So Carnage, it's on Prime. If people have Prime, you want to check it. Yeah. So, and what's kind of cool about it is that it was co-written by the author and Roman Polanski. So it's a good, like if you're at all curious, I might have to just let the dog out.
Who let the dog out?
Who let the dog out? Let's see.
Chris. Okay. This is the.
I'll do the outdoor.
The dog edition. These are the special dog podcast versions. Dog days, dogcasts. Rochelle, this is a perfect time. Rochelle's here. Welcome, Rochelle. She says, "Bon matin."
Montana just bacon.
shortbread and brownies.
That's a nice breakfast.
And then Gary's here. Welcome, Gary. GM to you as well.
GM.
We're just talking about Chris's his new role, preparing for this character that doesn't come naturally. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I would say that's very fair to say. It's just, and again, it's the work of being on stage and putting a story together like this is there's always the possibility that you could disagree with the direction or disagree with the blocking, or you don't like your outfit that you're asked to wear. All those are possibilities. I'm starting though with just the actual the characters are rich and deep enough that it'll be challenging for me just to learn things about myself as I play this character. That's all. And it's always flawed. Like sometimes this question is kind of applied to writers. Like I've heard this thing, Stephen King, applied to Stephen King before. Like, how can you write such horrific things and you seem like a nice guy? Well, the thing is, like, he is a nice guy, and he writes horrific things. Like, it's an and. Just side note, my dog is afraid of squirrels.
Oh.
There was a funny moment. Went out in the backyard, just doing their business, and there were two squirrels that ran up beside her. Come on. The door's open, dude. You can do it. Come on. Two squirrels ran past her, which just floored her. And then she sat there watching the squirrels run around the backyard and then watched them run up a tree. And then the look that she gave me when they ran up the tree, I interpreted to be, dogs can do that? So she didn't run up a tree. Anyways, I don't want to soak up our whole pod with my play chat. Because there's too much there. And it's too rough right now, so I don't have any real clarity around. I'm in the rough stage, right? The brainstorming stage of trying to figure this out. And that's always, it can be fascinating to watch, but it can also be damn boring for other people to, hear about, I think.
This is happening in March?
Yeah, March. Yeah, March.
And it's at Aurora Theater?
No, South Simcoe in Cookstown. So the north end of York region.
So is it
400? Just
South,
a little ways up.
South Simcoe Theater?
Yep. South Simcoe.
Cool. Very cool. Do you have enough time to get ready? Like, is that all perfect, that the timelines and stuff for this?
To get the show out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's what the great thing about the stage that at right now is that anything is possible. Like, anything is possible. Like, yeah, I think one of the astonishing and destabilizing thoughts you can have in doing, let's say, live performance is that anything can derail it. And almost anything is useful. It's kind of a funny, there's a catastrophic utilitarianism to it, that you're hoping to have a lot of messiness so that the product gets better. Mm-hmm. Messiness can be scarcity, as in you lose rehearsals. Messiness can be all of a sudden realize you've been playing the character one way and you get a peek at a different version. You're like, holy shit, I need to start moving that direction. The truth is more on that side. That's why it's been so difficult for me to grow the character, because I actually should have went left instead of right. Sickness, right? People can get sick. It's not like a movie. It's not like a movie set where you can kind of encapsulate moments and kind of control the moments. This is live, humans hanging around humans. So lots of destabilizing elements. It really gets me thinking about the necessity of destabilization, though, in the collaborative process. So if I take that back to the school, and I think about some of the committee work that I've been on and some of the leadership work that I've done, the crave and drive to get to stable protocols and procedures. I think we also it's necessary in those exact same groups to have destabilizing elements that shake some of the bullshit out of those processes. So, because I will say on stage, an actor, a fellow actor, can say or do one small thing, and a month's worth of rehearsal, it can pivot the whole production in a good way. It can take it in a bad way too, but if we're being opportunistic, it could go in either direction. I don't know if we have a mechanism that allows for that in education. I think we crave to be forward facing all the time. Sideways doesn't work. Backwards definitely doesn't work. So, and I'm not saying that because I believe it. It's just because I've observed it. I think backwards is useful a lot of times. So, for example, I think that your current current portfolio has completely destabilized your understanding of education. As I've listened to your stories over time, I don't think not to the point where you don't have it's sifted it. It's like sifted it. It's shaken it up enough that the pieces that are left behind right now, you see the value of them. And you understand how you're going to sharpen and hone them. You get the idea now of, if I would be so, plain, the nuggets that you found, you now know better what to do with them. And often when you're talking about what your day looks like or what your week looks like in your re-engagement work, I can hear where the things that you have discovered do not have often, like they don't land on the common tongue in EDU, at least in your board. But I've started to hear how much you relish being able to show back, reflect to the board and say, this is school. This is what's going on in your schools. And you might just be a signpost for some people. You're not necessarily a gatekeeper and you can just shove their face in and say, no, you need to understand this. But the fact that you're holding that line and saying, this is where I stand, and I'm not gonna change it so that it's easier for you to sort of see what I'm doing. I'm just gonna let you see exactly what I'm doing. And when even the other day when you started to talk about your environment as a classroom, I wondered if that got kind of caught in your throat a little bit, as in if that word, there was something about that word where you were trying to make it, if you really wanted where you do your work and who you're doing your work with to be boxed in a classroom. Like, does that word actually work for your version of EDU?
You nailed me on a few things that day. So I want to start by saying I really like the idea of being more of a signpost than a gatekeeper, because I'm not a gatekeeper, but I am a signpost because you can ignore me if you want, right? People ignore signposts all the time. Sometimes they pay attention to them. Sometimes they're useful. Sometimes people ignore them. Sometimes people don't see them because signposts don't speak. They're just there, and that's a good one for me to keep in mind moving forward, because I know some people view me as a gatekeeper and then use it against me. Oh, there's the sloth and the head. I'm like, is that a hole right through the head? Chris's dog is in destroying phase. Bye bye sloth. So will she now, like, will you take it away from her? Or will you, oh, bye bye hand. Will you just let her keep destroying it? Or, yeah, no?
No, I gotta take it away now.
Okay.
She's over there like, like that face. That's what she just did to the face.
Do you have like a box of those? You just toss her a new one now?
I don't, but I
Oh,
should. I and funny, how social media is always listening. Stuff is popping up on my Facebook about indestructible dog toys. And I
right.
would say in general, this material here, this material is really tough. But the problem is that this fleecy stuff on the front isn't. Like that's pretty soft. And these little tassely thing, there were long tassely things on each of the
Oh,
appendages, and they're gone. They're somewhere in her system. Like she's
oh,
still chewing on. I got to get something out of her mouth. Oh, she won't let me
okay.
get it. She's like,
These are the dog days of the podcast. Season 7. Chris gets a dog. Um, Season
doggies.
7, we don't see his basement anymore. Right?
I
Like
was
so
actually
many
thinking about
changes.
that. Thinking about
Clank
the
is
last
so
time.
sad
Yeah.
because Hazel's taken over.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to use this picture as the thing for today.
Oh,
The image. How can I do that? I don't know if I can
that's
do that with this thing
that's a good one.
because I don't know how to do the. Oh well, I'll figure it out. So sorry, I interrupted you. You had mentioned something about me challenging you, and
I like the way the sloth just came up from the bottom.
yeah.
I was like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Oh my god, it's the
Mhm.
sloth." Yeah. Um, I was just talking about the signpost versus the gatekeeper. Sometimes people see me as a gatekeeper,
Yeah.
and then they use it to get mad at me or to accuse me of something or to like they use it to fuel what it is that they're not happy with. And
Hmm.
then so as a signpost, then some people are like, "You're not doing enough. You're not doing enough." And I'm like, "What do you want me to do?" Like, and I don't say that in a disrespectful way. What do you want me to do? What do you see happening next? And then if we can verbalize that, or it can be produced in a way that I can understand, then I can respond by saying, that's not my job. Or, yes, I'll give that a go. Um, it's not often that I say, that's not my job. But
Hmm.
when I say that, it's always around like the really big things that are non-negotiable. Um, like recently, I've interacted with a parent about a new student I'm working with, and the parent said to me, because when I talked to the parent, the kid wasn't going to the school at all. So I said,
Hmm.
well, it's time now that I meet the student. And the parent said, will you? I said, I can do a porch visit. And they said, well, we live in an apartment building. I said, no problem. Like, come outside the apartment building. And then the parent said, in our building on the top floor, it's a common space. Excuse me. And then that common space leads to an outdoor common space area. She's like, so we have a common space. Can you come into the building and meet us in the common space? And I said, I don't know about that, but let me ask my principal. Let me bounce it off my principal. And as I was
Hmm.
talking to my principal's like, I'm not comfortable with you like going into the building, like getting into an elevator. Like she's like, I get that there's a common space, but for you to get there, there's a myriad of like places you have to get to and go through, and then you're still kind of enclosed. Um, and I was like, I totally get it. I'm not going in the building. She's like, is there a common space in the in the foyer? Like when you walk into the front foyer of the building where people are going to be coming in and out, is there a common space? I'm like, I don't know. That's a great question. So she's like, I'd be okay with you doing that because you're in a space where there's constant movement, in and out, in and out, in and out. And then me, I'm like, there's got to be a camera in the front foyer too, right? So like, I'm like, I'm here. You can watch everything I'm doing. Whereas I don't know what happens when you get into an elevator. I don't know what happens when you walk down the hallway. Like you're kind of boxed in a way that I don't want to be boxed in.
Hmm.
So like even just like so somebody might be like, well, you're not in their apartment. I'm like, yeah, but if you think about the layers, And nobody's really pushing me outright. Nobody's pushing outright, but I can read between the lines. I'm not as dumb as I look. I know some people want more. Um, some people want more. So I push myself to the max. Like the max so that I think I said this to you in a message. I need to be able to sleep at night. I don't want to be waking up in the middle of the night wondering, could I have done more? Should I have done this? Why did I do that? I don't want
Hmm.
any of that. And so I'm doing my very best to be as effective as I can and to demonstrate that I'm doing everything in my power. So, one day I could literally go to 6 different places and people are like, "You're nuts. Like, why are you doing that?" I'm like, "It sounds wild, but it's not as wild as it sounds." Like,
Hmm.
start my day, I go to the school, a kid's not there, so I go to the house, knock on the door, ring the doorbell, nobody answers, message the principal, message the parent. Like, that took 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So it's not like I spent half a day doing that. I'm like, okay, this kid's not at school. This kid's not answering the door at home. This kid's not responding to any of my communication. I will inform everybody of what I've just done, and then I'm going to the next kid. Right. So
Right.
I don't plan on seeing 6 kids a day. I plan on maybe 3 solid connections. But if those 3 I strike out in the first 2 hours of my day, I don't just punch out and go home. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, look at the roster. Who haven't I seen? Make that a priority. Go. Right. So that's, you and I joke like it'd be hilarious if I had a principal that was like, I need to see your day book. And I'm like, you need to see my day book? Yeah, like I need to see your schedule. Okay, well, you can look up my Outlook calendar. Usually I'm pretty good at putting things in, but then throughout the day I move things around because it didn't happen the way that I planned it to happen. So
Yeah.
that's my job. But that's my job. So I could be a total dick and be like, here are the 3 schools I'm going to be at today. And I could literally sit in the school and do this because the kid's not in the building. Why are you here? Why are you sitting in the library with your laptop open? I'm supposed to see Jimmy. Well, where is he? He didn't come to school today. Did you call his mom? No. She must have called the school because he's absent. Nobody here's worried. Like, do you, but then everybody's going to be like, what's wrong with Roland? Like, how come, why isn't he working? So it's
Yeah.
like, you can't have it both ways. I walk in, it's awesome. The admin assistant looks at me and just does one of these. I'm like, peace, I'm out. And then I get in the car, message the parent, I'm coming to your house to check in on the kid. I get to the house, they've responded or they've not responded. Like, it's all very, to me it's dot 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 dot. To other people it might look like chaos. I don't know. Like, I don't know, but I need to be able, at the end of the day, when someone says to me, what happened with Jimmy today? And I'm like, I went to the school. Jimmy, what? Oh, I texted the mom. Mom didn't respond. I went to the school. Jimmy wasn't at school. Texted the mom and said, I'm going to your house to ring the doorbell. I hope Jimmy will come out, open the door, and say hello to me, find out what's going on. And if I have Jimmy's number, I'll text Jimmy. I'll say, hey, Jimmy, it's Mr. C, your engagement teacher. You're not at school. I'm coming over. I just want to say hello, check in, see what's going on. Go to the house. I either get responses or I don't get responses, but all this is happening as like I'm driving to the house. Get to the house, ring the doorbell. Somebody answers or somebody doesn't answer. And then I document, I inform, and then I go to the next place. And so for me, for Jimmy, I did everything I could do that day. There's not much more. There's nothing else I can do, right? Like, if Jimmy
Hmm.
responds 2 hours later and says, "Oh, sorry, I slept in. Are you still around?" I can look at, okay, am I still in Jimmy's area or am I on the other side of town? Like, that's the other thing I told you about. I'm not gonna do the drive from one end of town to the other end of town 4 times in a day. That's not reasonable, nor should it be expected of me. It makes no sense.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, when you talked about my car being my classroom, it
Hmm.
hit me in all kinds of different ways, reminding me of my father. It reminded
Mm.
me of just like the kind of work that I'm currently doing. Um, I even thought for fun, like if you'd ask me what's your room number, it would be like the numbers on my license plate. I'm room and the 3 numbers of my license plate because that's where I operate, right?
Yeah.
Um, just the fun, stupid stuff I think of during the day when I'm going from one place to another. That's and like yesterday I was a little bit down. I know I didn't tell you that. I was a little bit down. I was feeling like, "Oh my god, like I'm not doing anything. I'm not making a difference. I'm
Hmm.
not effective." Like I had one of those afternoons where I'm just like what am I doing here? How you know, I that's what happens I guess on days where kids don't respond. It's like, what am I doing? Like I'll be standing outside in a neighborhood and just literally I'll take in a breath of fresh air, look around, be like, how did I get here? How did I end up standing in front of this house? I've got my school board toque on, I've got my badge, I'm dressed like a snowman because it's kind of cool out. It's like, how did how did this happen? What am I doing here? Um so yeah, I mean, so yeah, six touch points in a day is kind of, it sounds ridiculous, but it's me feeling like, okay, for today, I did everything I could do. Um, I did everything I could do. And remembering, because here's the thing, when I feel pressure, I, I, I try to push. And then I remember, no, you can't push these kids in the way that you push in a classroom. When you
Hmm.
do that, they're gone. They are the perfect CIA agents. They are gone and you'll never see them again. Right? Like they are spies. They somebody needs to bring these kids in and learn from them because they will disappear off the face of the earth if I push too hard. So I'm like, there's always this balance, right? Like somebody's like, you need to hammer them. They've not been here in a week. And I'm like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. So I filter it so that when I do hammer them, there's no hammer. It's just like people are concerned and people are becoming frustrated because they're doing everything they can and you're not helping. So what can you do to help? Then they'll say, I don't want to, or I can try this, try that, and you go from there. But anyway, sometimes, bro,
The
I'm just like, what am I doing here?
Yeah. The I like the that I like that how have I gotten here question. Uh, back in the day when how have I got here? The access to the why behind that can be really elusive, eh? And as a tool of reflection, I always prefers that when I start my reflective practice is I try to get to a space of neutrality before I engage with reflective practice. Because it's if I can get to some neutrality, even a little bit, or even to be aware if I need more neutrality, then I find my reflective practice is better. I find like I sort of have access to more thinking, more emotions, more diversity, more divergence in my thinking. So this moment of down day, whatever the seed point is, I mean, if you're down, what's that question around like if you're a hammer, all you're going to see is nails, kind of a thing. So if you're down, it's you. I think the lack of neutrality colors everything that you observe. It starts to like there's a certain gravity to it. It pulls you in that direction, right? I won't say, but it gets dark fast. It can get darker faster. So, and if it doesn't get darker faster, all that means is you found a way to pull up. You pulled up and you got back to neutrality again, right? Stoic tells us like get to that space, get to the detachment. So, and it doesn't mean that even when you are detached and neutral that you don't go dark, but you go there with better tools because you want to understand. You don't want to be victimized necessarily by your own reflective practice. So, in this moment where you're maybe not having a great day and a thought occurs to you, how have I gotten here? Um, to get to neutrality would just mean you could parse out a little bit better. So back in the day when I was working um, in the suspension expulsion program, after some time, okay, when we did intake, we know exactly how the kid got there. Like we know exactly what the kid did in their school that got them suspended or expelled, and then they were sent to my version of Bosco. Okay, temporary Bosco, a version of Bosco, anyways. After that, we spent some time with the kid, and this was better on the expulsion side because we had more time. Suspensions, 5, 10, 15 days. It's really, really tight. You're just kind of getting to the work. You're just kind of settling in, and then the kid gets sent back to the school. But on expulsion, where you actually had time to work with the kid, they could get some therapy from the social worker. We could get some credits done. We could help them sort of unpack how they got there. One of the questions I like to ask them, once we had good rapport and we had neutrality, is the question is something a little bit like this. Thinking back on your academic career, and I would use academic intentionally to compartmentalize it within school because it can get out of hand really quickly if you include other spaces. So I'd say thinking back on your academic career, at what point or at which points was it inevitable that you were going to meet me in this suspension and expulsion program? And that's a really, some kids are like, they get it right away. Others like, what do you mean? So you have to kind of shape it so they kind of get that certain decisions lead to outcomes, and that leads to relationships or meeting people that you would never thought that you would meet. Movies are based on this. The opening scene. I didn't think everything was going to end this way. Everything was going great. And then all of a sudden flashback to 4 months beforehand, right? And then it catches up to it, you hanging over the edge of a building, someone's holding you by your feet. So I like that you're standing in this neighborhood, having this existential question connected with it. I've been around for your story now for 6-7 years, is whatever amount of time that we've, at least 7 years now. Yeah, at least 7 years I've known you, which is kind of mind blowing if we're in 7th season, if we measure by that. But I knew you 2 years before that. So let's say 9 years, you and I have been chatting about bits and pieces about education and such. I can see the seeds of you becoming the person that you're doing this work. Now, you might not be actually asking, okay, thanks, Clef. Yeah, I got the notes too. I know how I've sort of traveled through my path in education. But what's really cool is that when I look at your path to that moment, what am I doing here? It's like there's a split consciousness, right? There's this idea that, actually, I won't dig it any farther because I'll analyze it to death. But one of the truths of the work is that the moment that you have a question like that, I would offer to you, it's because you're thinking as a gatekeeper. That's all. You're falling into gatekeeping. You're falling into quantitative thinking. You're falling into checklist thinking. And that's useful if it is. It's inspiring if it is. It can be aspirational if it is. But the work in the least, some of the best work that I've ever observed in education is where someone is just rocking the qualitative and they just don't give a damn of the quantitative. They understand they have to do it, but they spend no time feeding it. I would say the last 2 years, you have spent a massive amount of time building qualitative elements into education. And there isn't that's not gatekeeping. You build a fluency of expressing what you're doing to individuals that aren't doing it. That becomes gatekeeping again. You get back to quantitative. How far are you driving? How many kids are you meeting? How many schools have they made it into? What's the address of the kid? What's their state of mind? Like all this stuff that can easily fit into, that checkbox. I also mentioned in your polo, maybe this is me checking in on you, is that I haven't heard too many stories about you walking kid and dog to school. So if something has shifted in your work, if that's me checking the wind in your weather, then I would say it sounds as if something has shifted a little bit more recently, because I haven't heard a story like that in a while. And there were more stories like that last year, I felt. More stories about, I'm going to sit and I'm going to play Switch with you, kid. And I'm going to figure stuff out. I'm going to walk with you, kid. I'm just going to sit with you. So system pressure is always going to make it quantitative. And the longer you're in a job, I think systems tolerate qualitative on the front end because nobody knows what the job is. So you have to get through a whole lot of messy qualitative stuff. And then you do a presentation, and then an SO asks for some data. And then schools become familiarized with your spreadsheet. The routines get embedded, and maybe that's how you got to that moment standing on the street. Maybe that's what put you in the mindset of wondering about your efficacy, or just wondering about efficacy, maybe not yours, but just in general. I will still say, from whatever distance I am from you, the 175 kilometers away, the work that you're doing is still, it's ripple inducing, it's disruptive and destabilizing to what your current board's understanding of engagement is. Now, 2 years after its inception, because the original thing was just like, we got to catch kids that didn't do COVID teaching well. You're like, all right, we're going to find those languishers. And now you're on the other side saying, hey, you know what? There's 2 or 3 other stories at work here. And these stories have been going on long before COVID. Keep doing the work, dude. Keep doing it. And you will. I think you will. I think you enjoy it. A down day. I don't know if that means, let's say a down Roland for a day, I don't think means it's an actual down day. And a down day, I don't know if it actually means that Roland is down. But I get standing out on the street corner wondering, how did I get here? Probably you're measuring it by somebody else's checklist.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points.
I made too many points. That was way too long.
Lots of good points. If anybody needs to find out what I do, I'll just say Chris is coming. Somebody pay for his dinner. He's going to do this presentation of all these points.
Right.
But, then we can go eat dinner. But
yeah,
it is so different. It is so different, and 100% I love it, and 100% it has. I believe it has changed me in a way that I'm kind of annoying to other teachers now when they say to me, "Oh my God, this kid, I can't stand this kid," and they give me the rundown. I just say to them when they're done, and I say, "I totally get it. Like, I was in the classroom for 20 years, so it's not like I don't know what you're talking about. I completely get it." And as you were telling me the story, my head was flipping through the different students over the years that I felt this way as you're talking. And then I say to them, "Do you want them here or not?"
Yeah,
And
that's a great.
then they're like, "What?" I'm like,
Yeah,
you could use a couple of days of them being at home, but if you found out,
we forget how we sound. We
yeah,
forget how we sound.
I'm like, if they just stopped coming, what would you feel then? They're like, that'd be horrible. Like, I don't want
Well, you
that.
can go
I'm
one
like,
step further. You could push one step further. If the reason they stop coming is you,
that one
that's
hits hard. Yeah.
because that's the action. And again, that's the conversation you're actually in. Whether you're gonna maintain professional decorum and not say that to the person. That was the side that I was when I asked that question to the students. At what point was it inevitable that you and I were going to meet, or this program and you were going to meet? In many of the stories, it was like, that person didn't want me in there. And I knew it. And I knew it from the moment that I met them.
At the end of the day, that's what it's become for me now. Do you want them here or not?
Mm-hmm.
And when they say no, I prefer to have them here, and I'm like, okay, because what happens?
Show it.
Right? Yeah, show. So, but again, the pressures, they're here, but they're not doing anything. Okay, but when they're gone, you're gonna call me to bring them back. So that tells me that somebody somewhere wants them here. Like, right? Because that's my bottom line. Get them back there. Get them back to school. So all of a sudden, that's new baseline. We need them back in the building somehow, some way, some form. Even if it means an hour a day, even if it means like half a day, twice a week. Like, then all of a sudden we're willing to negotiate. That's the thing that I find really interesting about all this, is that when it gets to me, it's like, okay, let me see what I can do. And it starts with, who is this guy that wants to talk to me? Like, it's like somebody's gotten a lobotomy and they don't know how to do school anymore. And they're
Yeah.
like, go make this work again. And I'm like, And the one thing I've told my principal over and over again, which I know she understands, and my understanding is she's been providing this message to her colleagues, is that the work Roland is involved in is slow, like super slow. There is no, I get nervous every time I get a new referral because it's not a 2 month action. They're with me from the minute I take them on until at least the end of this school year. So there's no, oh, we just need your help for 3 weeks. No, you don't.
It's
If
not
the,
first aid. It's
no,
not first aid.
and I'm in. Like it's mine, and it's ringing the doorbell with nobody answering. It's all that stuff from now until the last day of school. It's on me,
Mhm.
right? So anyway, we've got some comments. Gary says personal pressure and hope in some cases can also lead to moments of reflection and questions efficacy.
I would, Gary, I did back in our COVID programming. I also kind of spoke at length about the dangers of hope. Yeah, so not to poo poo on your comment, Gary. I am aware, but if hope doesn't get you back, I mean, and what I'm talking about here fundamentally is finding the most neutral starting point for your thinking. If your thinking builds towards hope, it's still, you need to be able to detach from hope. If it builds towards darkness, you need to be able to detach from the darkness as well in order to kind of figure out what to do next. So
And it's funny, Chris, because when you and I talk about hope, I know your spin on it, and then I laugh because Catholics are people of hope. So it's
mhm.
like we literally hang our hats on hope.
But see, and again, this is where we get a different fluency, right? So my agnostic version of hope turns it into a pragmatic tool. I don't go hope faith. I don't go hope faith. I don't connect that and go hope faith and then religious practice. There's a stopping point there. So I have maybe the privilege or I can simplify it in a way that can sound cold, but what I'm actually doing is keeping it human. I'm keeping it. I'm being humanist about it, right? And so again, as long as, and I would say religious practice without detachment is problematic too. So to be able to just bring it back to what do I think? What am I thinking? What are my feelings? What am I feeling? And to be able to kind of like bring that as a toolkit, I think it's critical. I think it's critical to just having a useful self-examined life. So I like that. Thanks,
Um,
Gary.
so here's a good connection. Gary says he's felt that way when he's thought that I help a student turn a corner only to have a momentary backslide. So the really
Mhm.
cool thing about this, 100%, I understand what you're saying. I remember when I was working with students at your school, Gary, that I was trying to bring back to you. And it was like, I would say to the kids, like, we can get you into Mr. K's room 229 or 239, something like that. I'm like, if I can only get them into Gary, then Gary can take over and he can start building them up to get them back in the classroom. Like I could see the tears. And the good thing is I actually trust Gary. So like I knew
Mhm.
that if I could get a kid to student success with Gary, that they'd be okay. Because I remember walking in there and there were days that it was just packed and Gary's bouncing from one kid to another. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the other teacher's name. Miss Penny or something like that. There was the word Penny in there somewhere. I don't think it's her first name, but I could be wrong. You two kind of doing your thing, and I would say to kids, what do we need to do to get you back? Like to check out student success. Even if you tell me you're going like an hour tomorrow, go to student success because they can start helping you build what you need to get back into one of your classrooms.
Mhm.
So I hear what Gary's saying,
Yep.
and there were times where I'd go to Gary and I'm like, they're not coming. And then I feel useless, right? Because my job is to get them to Gary.
Mhm.
And then there were times where Gary's like, they were here, now they're gone. That's that backslide. And then it's back into my territory. It's funny because I'm at the bottom of the hill. So it's all coming downhill. It passes Gary right into my lap. And I'm like, I guess it's mine again.
It's funny. It's even. I'll just say it again. The the backslide bottom of a hill language, I'm going to challenge you on it. I believe it's a flat playing field. I really do. I think there's an element of it's laid out flat, and we each inhabit both the kids, the families, the community. I'm always cautious about setting up language that sounds bureaucratic, economic, and disparaging to individuals that are doing kind of like I mentioned to you about, like, one of the challenges with having a puppy is that the puppy's just being a puppy. If I get angry at the puppy for peeing on the floor, that's not a backslide. That's the dog having to go to the bathroom. I miss the cues. So if I'm not keeping to the rigor of the 30-minute, 40-minute, I'm increasing the likelihood both that the dog's going to pee on the floor and that I'm going to be triggered and blame the dog for doing something that they shouldn't have done. But they did. They're doing exactly what they should do. So I've spent this past year listening for opportunities to push back on some of the language that we use in education, and the language that sort of almost like, it's not mathematical, but it is deficit language. That idea of backsliding, I'm at the bottom of the hill. It's the same way, like, I'm not a big fan of. This is another podcast altogether, but even talking about battles with disease, like militarizing our healthcare. I'm aware of using certain words, and often the idea of battling and cancer are put together. I'm not a fan of that, because I feel like that language doesn't speak to wellness and therapeutic end. So, anyways, backsliding, bottom of the hill, the kid just being the kid, and the kid decides not to be in the classroom. I get that there are problems that come out of that, but I don't take it as a backslide. I sort of in some ways have to accept that that's the behavior that's being presented, and that my checklist is not the checklist that the kid is fulfilling. There's another conversation that comes around this zone, though, is that if the backslide somehow makes let's say the teacher feel like their job is in jeopardy, like their position could be in question, or them in the position could be in question because they're not turning out results, that's another conversation altogether. But I can see how that could lead to a little bit of like identifying a backslide, because then the backslide leads to the individual maybe not holding their position. Somebody else can do this job better. But I would still argue that if you're the best possible human trying to figure out the best in that other possible human, that qualitative work wins out every time.
You certainly need the qualitative work to get to the quantitative, in my view and in my experience. And you know what? When people want numbers, I can give them numbers. Like we, in my role, we've defined success to look a certain way, and
Mm-hmm.
success can look different for every kid. So that's my trump card, is that success is not what you telling me it is. It's not. And if success is earning a level 3 in mathematics and the kid's not in class, then all of a sudden you're like, you have to get them into class, then success for me is going to drop down, or it's going to go across and land in my lap, in
Mm-hmm.
that, okay, so is anybody talking to the kid? No. Well, he's not going to get to math class if nobody's talking to them. So I guess I'll start talking to them and start building from there.
Mm-hmm.
Zach is bored. Welcome. I love the name Zach is bored because he's hanging out with us. Maybe we're boring him. I don't know. Zach says that he always wants the kids at school, and at his school, sometimes adjectives about kids fly around. Peeps hate it when you challenge their adjectives about kids.
I love trying to dig in. As like, where does that word come from? I know right away when people are talking system and when they're talking personally. I get that. I'll split that, even if they're not aware of it. I hear when people say great things about working in EDU. I hear where they say very human things. I hear where they're like just they're talking textbook, right? I hear all that. So yeah, the adjectives.
And then, oh, it's Carlos. Hey, Carlos. Carlos is bored. Carlos is great.
Morning, Carlos.
Carlos says the ministry should hire 400 more of me. I'm assuming not math consultants. It's hilarious when I run into the math consultants. It's funny. It's like it's this. I think it's like a mutual respect. We both kind of salute each other and just keep going. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear about their math stuff, and they certainly don't want to hear about my re-engagement stuff. So, oh, Zach is my kid. We get it. We get it. Yes, thank you for joining us. We are actually. It looks like. Oh, I was going to say Carlos is going to get the last word, but really it's going to be Gary. Gary says, I understand your point, Chris, about the power of language, especially judgmental words that interfere with the work we do. I think sometimes the words come out because people are frustrated. So I'm not 100% defending people saying things like what we're talking about, but sometimes people need to say things. And I think
They
they need to
do.
find their people to say it to and not maybe
Absolutely.
advertise to every single human in the building or in the
Well,
staff.
see, that's the thing. When I watch it constantly being kind of just broadcast, then I think there's something else going on. So here's our piece of art for today.
Oh, that's awesome. The sloth with no nose.
The sloth that the dog decided to bite the face off of. Like,
Oh.
seriously, Karen. Like, that's Karen came down. Yeah. So, yeah, and I think it's important to destabilize the language. That's it. That's just to sort of challenge it. Ask the questions. What's the point of origin? What power does that hold? What power does that language hold for you, for the kid in this conversation? So, because the passerby. So if I get you and I'm one of your people, Chids, and you're sharing that with me, then that means I'm at neutral. I'm receiving that at neutral, or I can work to receive that information at neutral. If I'm a passerby, and there's lots of passersby, and they hear certain language being presented about a kid, a situation, a school, any noun, right? Person, place, or thing, becomes problematic because they're not receiving it at neutral. It automatically sends them in a direction that necessarily they can't work out without more information. So if they do walk by and hear someone say, yeah, backslide, bottom of the hill, rolling backwards, they're not going to automatically think it's a conversation about skiing. They're going to move into that direction where they're obviously talking about someone's poor performance. So I think challenging the language and making sure it allow us better access to clarity and compassionate clarity, right? That's where I would sort of challenge people to build hope, if they can have compassion and clarity at the same time.
Any final words before we go?
This is the best magazine ever.
I saw that you'd posted it and I wondered what it was. It's like a creative type thing?
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. Uppercase. It's a great, I'll just leave it at that. That's
Okay.
the final words.
What's it called?
Uppercase.
Uppercase. Look it up, people. I think we found our new mascot.
It's Clank. It's Clank in sloth form.
There you go. Okay. This was, thank you, Gary. Thank you, Carlos, aka Zach is bored.
I love it. I love it.
And Rochelle, I hope your brownies and your shortbread come out well. This was
I will e-transfer you, Rochelle. If you send me some, send me the cost. I'll order some. You got an extra batch, I'll take it.
I'll take the brownies. Chris can have the shortbread. This was season 7, episode 11, 276 of the Decoded podcast. Take care, everybody. Peace.